What is up, guys? You got NotTheWorst here, bringing another Black Desert online video, and today we're taking a look at the Global Lab patch notes for June 23rd. As you can see, we got a little teaser for the Maegu Awakening. Looks pretty dope. We got I really like the color scheme on this. We get kind of a Sork, maybe Suck DK-esque type interactions. Looks like close range combat there. So pretty excited for that. They did give us a confirmed release date on this. It is going to be July 5th on it, which was a little bit later than they had originally planned. As last noted, they said they were shooting for June, so most people were speculating to see it the last week of June. That's not going to happen, especially with the Festa happening on July 1st. Makes most sense that they are going to have probably a full trailer and everything for it then. And we will see after that date, at least currently they're saying July 2nd, you'll be able to test it on the Global Labs directly after that. So I would fully expect like a full trailer thing released during that Festa event in Korea. Something like that, kind of go over, I don't know, their design processes and what have you, and then we'll have it on the Global Labs next day. And the following week's patch will then have the live version. So dev note that we have on this, we're preparing for a change in hunting ground, so grind zone here. Currently, many adventurers are expressing their concerns about the so-called soft cap. They're talking about AP caps here, which limits the ability of grind zones. We should have commented on it a little quicker, but didn't. Okay. In particular, even though we were able to feel the sense of growth and deprivation due to the related phenomenon, we're sorry for not being able to explain it more quickly. It's late, but we'd like to share about the future direction we're preparing. I just want to point out, though, before we read the next paragraph, they talk about like the AP cap restriction in that first paragraph, and then they actually don't mention necessarily what's going on, just that they are looking at changing something about current grind zones and adding new grind zone that they're working on as well. And while that's welcome, I would just be curious to see what the plan is for it. Maybe we'll get that at the Festa for the changing of grind zones. Anyone that's grinded like Hex or Trolls or something like that, the 5% AP cap is like incredibly restrictive and somewhat silly to a point, right? Like if I managed to actually hit my pen debo instead of downgrading every time, I'd get a nice AP boost in theory, but in practice at one of those PvE zones, it does actually absolutely nothing because of the 5% AP cap restriction, which is a little bit silly when we're talking about endgame gear and endgame grind zone. So anyways, first of all, the current grind zone has not had a current grinding has not had a major patch since Skype and Rassia Underground was introduced. We're currently preparing a new grind zone and believe that something new is needed. We will prepare for this well and present it to adventurers as soon as we can. In addition to the new grind zone, we also wanted to make changes to existing ones. So we also had made changes by introducing the Elvia realms to existing areas for diversity, but it does have its limitations. So this time we want to try something completely different, focusing on the difficulty selection applied to the Black Shrine. You can choose a specific hunting ground according to your current attack and defense. Guidance on this method will be released soon, and besides the couple of things we just shared, we're going to continue to think about better ways to further push this along. We want to thank everybody, yada, yada, yada. I paraphrased a bit here because some translations there didn't quite sit. A few other things I'm not going to dwell on, like the random junk that's in here too much, but there's a sitting social action, so hooray. They added a node in Land of the Morning Light. The Dal Rey Naru now has a node that's on there. They're following Hamo's equipment. There's now Panoxeons, I know I butchered those, exclusive equipment that's been added with it. The Ship Pirates Workshop is added to Moodle Village 2 in Nampo as well in the Land of the Morning Light for 1 contribution, so that you can produce these equipment pieces. Ship crew slots there's a small gift from the dude in Nampo for travelers preparing for a voyage. It's got a quest on it for, I guess, more crew slots on it. Yeah, again, translation's a little bit interesting there. Added NPCs in Land of the Morning Light, yada yada, UI changes, bug fixes, and then here's what we're looking for: some class changes. So first, we have invincibility against monster effects added for essentially the evasion type skills of certain classes that apparently didn't have these on them before, and that's Ninja Striker, Mystic Archer, Nova, Corsair, Draconia, and Hash. So these are PvE iframes for it. And then we have the two bigger news, although we saw the Maegu video at the beginning of the video. We have some pretty large DK PvE buffs here. So in today's update, hunting performance has been increased by increasing the PvE damage. The main skills of Succession and Awakening. Speculatory was just Awakening would need these, but they decided to up Succession, and some of them are pretty wild, as we'll see in a little bit. First of all, Dark Knight's Succession has improved the duration of the attack speed increase effect of Unveiled Dagger. It's getting a 10-second duration now instead of 5-second. Which makes using it Unveiled Fate, which is one of the Revamped skills, was recently it was probably 8 months ago now, was buffed to be a 10% attack speed for the length of time. It was prior to that a 5% attack speed, so it was just strictly worse in that regard than Unveiled Dagger. And Unveiled Fate was the way to go since the duration and when it got the buff, but Unveiled Fate now just being quicker just makes way more sense to use and may just eliminate the need for Unveiled Fate whatsoever, although most of the Revampts in that slot don't matter anyways, so it won't have a huge increase in difference there, but it's a nice addition nonetheless. And then Succession DK got PvE damage buffs across the board in virtually everything. There's also skill linkage that was adjusted for Blooming Black Rose. That is the Magnus skill, which was fairly useless other than some niche situations or kind of like forcing yourself to use it in some situations. It didn't really make a lot of sense. They've changed it so it can now be used that the second hit of it applies right after your comma slash or right after Spirit Legacy. So that's very likely going to be used in standard skill rotation moving forward. The damage was increased on it as well, going up from 1,300 to 1,600 numbers on there. The PvP reduction rate on all of these was adjusted to maintain the overall PvP damage to be the same. So these are pretty much PvE only buffs for it. We see damage increases also on, these are the Succession versions, so Prime, Enforcement, Wheel of Fortune, comma slash, Lunacy, and Ravage Rake. So almost every single one of your PvE skills in Succession got damage buffs, anywhere from around 15% to Wheel of Fortune got something like a 30% damage increase, going from 1,500 on the upper end to 2,111, which is a whole lot of damage. So it'd be pretty interesting to test this out and see what kind of numbers we can push. On the Awakening side, there was a couple of changes as well. The linkage of the Flow Spirit Blaze was adjusted so that ideally there's not going to be, it feels a little awkward when you use Spirit Blaze now, going from the regular into the Flow. There's kind of like a space there as she gets set up for it. And in a lot of cases, you just kind of hotkey the Flow skill and use that by itself. Maybe that'll change with this coming up. The flow for Seed of Catastrophe was changed from 8.5 seconds to 8 seconds to match the standard non-flow part of Seed, which just makes sense. And then the change that every time somebody would ask me in the stream pop up and say, hey, if you could change one thing, what buffs would you give Awakening DK for PvE or whatever? What do you think that needs? The number one thing I always said is that there's no reason Spirit Legacy needs to be an 11-second cooldown still, especially when Succession has an 8-second version. Successions is just strictly better at the current iteration, and they actually changed exactly that. They brought the Spirit Legacy down to 8 seconds on it. That might seem like a small change. That's actually pretty huge, because the issue where most people complain about Awakening DK PvE performance is I'm air quoting, but you can't see my camera, gap fillers, and everybody kind of had their own iteration for what they do. Are you just throwing like a touch of exploitation chain in there to kind of fill the space? Do you go into some pre-awakened skills for it? Do you run through the Spirit Blaze set that's unprotected, so you can't do that at Hex unless you're really careful? Things like that, right? This sort of eliminates the need for that gap filler. It's Spirit Legacy that had the issue with the cooldown being too long that kind of messed up the rotations from being top to bottom repeatable, so that you can just cycle through the same thing. So this is actually going to give a lot more flexibility to that. That's a pretty significant change for it. In addition to that, it got more damage as well, going up an additional 200% in damage, making it actually better than the Succession one since it outputs more damage, although Succession doesn't care since it has wild damage numbers on a lot of its skills now. We also see PvE damage increases happening on Seed of Catastrophe. The Flow as well is getting a little bit more damage. Cluster of Despair goes up another 200%. Dark Nebula is getting 500% increase. Now these are the numbers. It's not a 500% increase from the amount. When I say increase, I mean it's 1341 going up to 1810. Okay, so keep that in mind. I don't want to say it's a 500% increase on the skill, and we're increasing 1341 another 500% of itself. Grip of Grudge goes up a bit, as well as the Spirit Blaze and the Flow getting a little bit. Now these flat damage amounts are not as high as successions on it, and number of hits are relatively the same on this. So the current comparison for endgame grinding is Succession's a little bit better than Awakening. It's not to a point where you like kind of have to play Succession or you're gimping yourself from PvE performance in it. You can totally play Awakening and do just fine. The numbers are close enough for it. This is likely to stay the same because Succession got even more damage put on it. I'm not complaining by any means. I just don't really see where they needed it, other than I think they just wanted to actually move this class to be competitive with S-tier grinding classes, which I can definitely see that happening from here, but we'll definitely have to test it out. Last piece, we did see the Maegu trailer right at the beginning there, but the Awakening Maegu, as I mentioned at the beginning, is going to be updated on July 5th. Pre-play is available on the Global Lab after the July 2nd patch. They said, as it is delayed, we'll release it with a more complete look. Probably could have gone without that statement, just because it implies that it was going to release without a complete look, or that when you don't delay a class that they're released without a complete look, which is not what they meant for sure, but that's what ends up coming across that way. But anyway, it looks pretty cool. I'm really excited for it for sure. And if they were looking to get me to stop playing Diablo 4, buffing DK and releasing Awakening Maegu alongside some new grind options, that's literally everything I do in this game. So they did a really good job with those announcements. I'm definitely pumped for this stuff coming out and can't wait to see the new class release and try out DK for sure. But that's going to be it for this video. Let me know what you guys think about what's upcoming. These are likely to hit along with that July 5th patch as far as the other changes that weren't Maegu. DK buffs and then this sit down emote and stuff. That's not necessarily guaranteed. They didn't promise that in there. It's just typically that's the flow of Global Labs. We usually see them 2 weeks in the patch right after it, and it would just make sense that comes alongside July 5th since they're mentioned in the same note. So keep that in mind for when these do go live. They're not live now. They're not live coming next patch. It'll probably be the one after, but not a guarantee. That's going to be it for this one. I want to thank everybody for watching, and I will see you next time.